The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferentz.
New Jersey's Attorney General taking on Amazon in a federal antitrust lawsuit. Meanwhile, the Faster Labor Contracts Act and the rising number of Republicans who are on board. And today on the show on Trades Day, it's the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 11th edition of America's Workforce, where we are available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Timothy Driscoll will be our featured guest on the show today. He is a second-generation bricklayer. Started his career over 40 years ago, 1985, with Local 3 in Massachusetts, where he served his apprenticeship and worked on a number of commercial and institutional projects throughout the Boston area before traveling for work in the early 1990s and eventually settling in the Washington, D.C. metro area and joining Local 1, which encompasses Maryland and Virginia. Well, today, Timothy is the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. And I'll tell you, they have a history that goes back to the end of the Civil War. It's the oldest continuously operating trade union in North America, founded in 1865 as the Bricklayers, Masons, and Plasterers International Union of America. It was established during a great wave of blue-collar union formation back in the 1860s. And the organization has changed its name several times during its history to reflect its changing membership. And this is all part of Labor 132, and today is Trades Day, so we focus on a specific trade, and Tim is going to talk about, well, the bricklayers, what they do, how they do it, and the importance of having a union, a powerful union like the Bricklayers. Their website, by the way, is bacweb.org. First thing we're going to get into is labor law reform. We're going to talk about the PRO Act, the Faster Labor Contract Act. I'll get to that in a minute. Also, the need for the development and implementation of artificial intelligence to be worker-centered. Okay, right now, big tech is calling all the shots. Workers have to be involved. Tim will speak to that. And lastly, immigration reform. The current playbook by this administration pretty much seeks to villainize immigrants in an effort to undermine solidarity amongst workers, and that has to stop. So Tim Driscoll, our featured guest today, is part of Labor 132 and Trades Day right here on America's Workforce. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. The segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. I mentioned that Faster Labor Contracts Act. Well, in early June, the House passed it with 20 Republicans crossing party lines to support it. Should the Senate follow suit, the bill, backed by unions, would set firm deadlines for contract negotiations and require binding arbitration if no deal is reached within 120 days. Now, while the bill is likely to stall in the Senate, well, they're on recess right now, so nothing's going to happen. Its bipartisan support in the House points to a rising number of Republican lawmakers willing to side with organized labor. Senator Josh Hawley, for one, who introduced the Senate version of the bill, reported that there have been discussions of the bill on the Senate Labor Committee, and he hopes to get a vote. Now, business groups, well, they're pretty vocal on this. That includes the Chamber of Commerce. They have voiced loud opposition to the bill, arguing that the timelines set are not realistic and could lead to an influx of expensive and uncertain arbitration. I'm sure they'll use the words job killer. Wait for that to happen. The Attorney General of New Jersey, Jennifer Davenport, has filed a federal antitrust lawsuit, this happened last week, accusing Amazon of using its outsized buying power to dominate last-mile delivery services across the state and the New York City metropolitan area, arguing the company functions as a monopoly that turns nominally independent delivery contractors into captive sellers. The complaint, filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey, alleges Amazon's control over package assignment and route creation leaves suppliers financially dependent on the company, which that ultimately harms drivers who face longer hours and lower pay. The state also claims Amazon has taken steps to prevent delivery companies from poaching each other's drivers, chilling competition, and is asking the court to enjoin those practices. What does Amazon say? Well, spokesperson Steve Kelly denied the allegation, saying delivery suppliers are independent business owners free to work with other companies. Would you expect them to say, right? All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LiUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LiUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LiUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org. Are you an experienced mechanical insulator looking to take your career to the next level? Insulators Local 50 in Central Ohio has steady work for a number of years. Insulators Local 50 offers a total wage and benefits package that can't be beat. It's not just the competitive wages. Local 50 also provides medical, vision, and dental insurance with no paycheck deductions for you and your family. Don't miss out on the chance to secure your future. Join us at Insulators Local 50. Earn great pay and the best benefits. Visit insulatorsfifty.com/AWF50 to fill out the online form, and a Local 50 representative will call to begin the process. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. The Heat and Frost Insulators and Allied Workers are proud to be a title sponsor for America's Workforce Radio. The Insulators Union is leading the way in the mechanical insulation industry, fire stopping, and infectious disease control. Regarded as North America's energy conservation specialists, these professionals are known for their professional work and dedication. You can learn more about the Insulators Union at insulators.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to our featured guest today, no stranger to America's Workforce. Tim Driscoll is a second-generation bricklayer, started his career back in 1985 with Local 3 in Massachusetts, where he served his apprenticeship and worked on a number of commercial and institutional projects throughout the Boston area. Well, today, he is president of the Bricklayers Union, bacweb.org. And I'll tell you, here's one union that has a storied history going back to, you ready for this? 1865, the end of the Civil War. 1865, that was 161 years ago, if I'm doing my math correctly. And you know, what we're doing here on America's Workforce, we are doing a countdown to Labor Day. It was 132 years ago that Labor Day was designated as a national holiday. And, on this show, we celebrate Labor Day every day. It's so important. You work hard. You need to be celebrated for what you're doing, especially if you're a bricklayer. That's a tough job. Hey, Tim Driscoll, welcome back to America's Workforce. I'm probably taking you back to those days when you were in the apprenticeship program. You know what? That was a tough start in life, wasn't it?
Not quite 1865, but it's a minute ago, right?
Yeah.
Thanks, Flash, and it's great to be with you here today.
So what I want to do here in this show is I want to talk about labor law reform, and it's important. When we take a look at the history of organized labor, by all means, in one word, struggle. It was a struggle. I mean, people fought hard. People died to get to where we are today. And I want to go back to the 1930s when FDR was president. And he created the National Labor Relations Act, minimum wage, and Social Security, all the good things that people actually needed and still need. And what we're seeing today is a lot of that being chipped away. But let's talk about, what was accomplished and what we need to strengthen labor law in America. I want to start right there, brother. Go ahead.
So as you pointed out, our history goes back to 1865. Two groups of workers, right? Philadelphia and Baltimore got together and said there's a better way to do business. They did all that before there was labor law. In fact, as you pointed out, the NLRA didn't come into force until the 30s. And I think what people forget is that the NLRA wasn't, just solely a gift to workers. It was a way to find how to get along better, right? It created peace where we had labor strife. And I'll say this as bluntly as I can. I think if there's a failure to actually have meaningful labor law, then we will be back to strife in the streets.
So there's a couple of pieces of legislation that we have been following here on America's Workforce. So one of them is the PRO Act and the Faster Labor Contract Act, which did got some mileage here and bipartisan support. Can you speak to both of those and how important they are for workers?
Absolutely. The PRO Act, which has also been known as the Richard Trumka Act, has been before Congress twice now. It's really a fundamental rewrite of making sure labor law is going to be effective for workers. We know that right now, too often, workers are denied a meaningful voice in the workplace. And the Faster Labor Contract Act, while it's a slimmed down version of the PRO Act, you're right. It did receive some bipartisan support, as did the PRO Act. It also had Republican support. So I'm encouraged by that, but also recognize that we need a sea change of leadership in Washington. We have to have elected officials who don't trip over the word union, who aren't afraid to meet with workers, who aren't afraid to deliver what they want. And that's what both these pieces do. You're right. The Faster Labor Contracts Act has gotten some attention. And really what that's about is, let's put some numbers out there, right? We have thousands of elections in workplaces across this country every year. Now, the expectation is when workers win an election, we don't win every one of them, but when we win elections, we're going to get a contract, right? Because that's why workers join unions. They know they can do better working together for safer workplaces, better pay, work conditions, retirement, healthcare, all those things. Maybe this won't surprise you. Over 36% of those elections, only 36% result in a collective bargaining agreement in the first year. You go out 2 years, that number goes up to 56. But here's the kicker. Over 30% of those elections never result in a collective bargaining agreement. And that's just perverse. And that's because too many employers, too much big money has figured out a way to make sure that workers' voices aren't heard, even when they've gone through the rigorous process of saying, no, we want union representation and here are our demands. We've got to fix that.
The Faster Labor Contracts Act, which we've talked about on the show with a number of guests, union leaders like yourself, I guess there's a time limit on it, like 120 days. if the parties don't reach an agreement within that time. And, you mentioned a year, 120 days. Well, that's a couple of months, 4 months to be exact. If they don't come to some kind of an agreement, that's when I guess an arbitrator would have to come in. Now, I don't know if you caught this, but there's a couple on the far right that don't like that. They call them government mandated arbitrators that will impose a union contract on workers and employers without their say. This is what they're saying. I'm sure you heard probably even more than that. But how do you react to that as president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers, Tim?
Yeah, Flash, that's just crazy. These are the same people who, while they want to denigrate arbitrators in this setting, are more than happy to say that consumers have to be bound to arbitration provisions inside a commercial contract with their cable provider and things like that. Look, the arbitration provision in the Faster Labor Contracts Act is simply a recognition. And look, we've got several of these going on right now. We've got employers in California and Florida who have farted around for 2 years with us. We don't have a contract because they know there's no punishment for that. Asking workers to hang on for several years to get what they already said they wanted in an election process that takes months, that's absurd. So the characterization of this as government imposed, no, what it is, it's putting some guardrails and saying, hey, if you're not going to bargain in good faith as required by the law, then somebody else is going to come in and say this is going to be the settlement.
Yeah. And there's so many people in America today that want to join a union, but because of the union busters that are out there and the fact that, they join the union and then they can't get that contract and then they move on. And that's exactly what corporations would like. They don't want the same workers there. They want a new breed here. I want to switch gears here and talk about artificial intelligence. And I know this is just sweeping all across the world. Let's be honest about that. And I know a lot of people are scared, and it's important. Boy, if there's any time to be involved in a union, it's now, because we have seen various unions rein in AI in their collective bargaining agreements. How is AI affecting the bricklayers right now, Tim?
For us, Flash, it's more on the back end, right? We build structures, buildings across the United States and Canada, but before they get to the job site, they have to be drawn up by somebody. They have to actually come up with some integrated models. And so it's probably going to be the design and engineering aspects that could have serious implications for both the timing, the sequencing of building, and also ultimately what it's going to look like. So we have an active role right now in the design community. We're making sure our members' interests are represented in this new digital frontier. The notion that it can come into the workplace is very real. Could it be used to surveil? Could it be used to make determinations on worker placement? Those are pieces that we are absolutely engaged in. And as it becomes a reality, we're going to make sure that it's represented in our collective bargaining agreements.
Tim, the big tech companies are really pushing this and pushing it really hard, probably by design. I think I get the impression they want this to happen right away, so workers are kind of befuddled by it. So they kind of ram it down their throats. Let's get it done now, and then we could work out the details later. And I know is it going too fast, in your opinion? Is it too fast and too furious right now?
It is, if it's not worker-centered. I mean, look, there are different players involved in the game, but this notion that technology in itself, in any phase, AI is the latest phase of it, is inevitable, is false, right? These are all choices about how we proceed, and they need to be engaged with workers and in their communities. And if they do that in a meaningful and respectful way, not only will it be productive, but it will also be something that communities can embrace. But if it's an attempt to ride roughshod over workers in our communities, then we're going to push back with everything we've got.
Our featured guest today on Trades Day here on America's Workforce is Tim Driscoll. Tim is the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. Here's a website you want to go to. It's bacweb.org. bacweb.org. Immigration reform, Tim. I know that's a hot topic for you. Let's talk about that next, right here on America's Workforce. Don't go away.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
Rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
we are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid healthcare, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms, and that includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. When you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. Always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Also appreciate you as a listener of America's Workforce for keeping us the #1 union podcast in America for 3 years in a row. We appreciate that. 3 years in a row. We'll keep doing a good job so you'll keep listening and promote America's Workforce to other workers in your community, union and non-union. We want them all right here on the show. awfpodcast.com is a website where we archive all of the shows. Our featured guest today is Tim Driscoll. Tim is the president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. BACweb.org is a website. Tim, I know you want to get into immigration reform. We did talk about artificial intelligence in the last segment here, and you wanted to say a few things about artificial intelligence and data centers. And this needs to be said because, you know, politicians love division. They like to divide people up. And so people fight each other, get frustrated, don't go to the polls. We know that story. And we're kind of seeing that pan out now with data centers because this has turned into a big debate all over America. And we need the data centers. If we like our technical devices, if we like technology, which we do, guess what? We have to store it. We need those data centers. Then again, we have to do them in a responsible way. I wonder if you could speak to that, Tim.
Look, you really captured it right there. Responsible is the key word. You know, AI as a technology is coming. What shape, what form it looks like, that's where we get to have an input. And data centers right now, look, they're the physical manifestation of everyone's anxiety around AI, right? I worry, you know, for my daughter's future. She's an architect. I don't know what AI will be there. People are going to express those concerns, and data centers are where that's happening right now. Responsible siting of data centers is not just that they need to be built union. That's absolutely fundamental ground rule 1. The other is they need to be sited in coordination with the community for both its environmental and economic impact. we're not going to be steamrolled, right, by entities that feel that they don't need to engage with labor or the communities where these data centers will go. So we're going to have good actors and bad actors, and that's life. We're going to work with the good actors, and we're going to fight the bad actors on this.
Yeah, that's normally the case all around America. A lot of people I know are concerned about their electric bills, and we've seen a big jump in utility costs here in the past couple of years. And obviously, if these people are going to make money on the data centers, they should make sure that they have the power to generate those data centers because that's the cost of doing business. Simple as that. All right. Let's move to immigration reform. I know it's not just the bricklayers, all the trades very concerned. And, we are a nation of immigrants. Let's be honest about that. And when it comes to immigration law, well, it needs some work. How is this affecting the bricklayers right now, Tim?
Yeah, you said a mouthful there. Immigration law absolutely needs reform. But what we're seeing right now with the current administration is really, it's a villainization of immigrants. And let's not be fooled. That's really an attempt to put a wedge between workers, right? We recognize that our country, like any other sovereign nation, has a right to maintain its borders, to determine immigration control. But this notion that sweeping up people that you think are not here properly indiscriminately is a thoughtful policy, nonsense. We're behind any effort that's going to make sure anyone who comes to this country, seeks the authorization to work here illegally, and wants to do so under a collective bargaining agreement, they're welcome as flowers in May with the bricklayers.
Well, the courts have also been a stick in the mud in this whole issue with temporary protected status. Any comment on that? That's got to have an effect on you.
Absolutely. We have no shortage of members who have TPS still currently, fortunately, some who have lost it. And really, it's an abuse of the TPS system right now by this administration in terms of its efforts to deport folks. We were told early on that they were going to go up and seek the worst, the baddest in their effort to clean up the immigration rolls. It's been anything but that. BAC has had members across the country with work authorization and some U.S. citizens who've been swept up in ICE raids. Now, they were later released, but not without substantial financial cost and trauma to their families. That's unacceptable. Mm-hmm. If someone's here and is willing to abide by the rules, work under a local union CBA, we're going to stand up for them every day of the week.
Tim, I got one more for you. The misclassification of workers, independent contractors. I know that's a huge issue in America for the trades, the Teamsters. I mean, so many unions are dealing with this. I had a story recently about the New Jersey State AFL-CIO and what they've done. I don't know if you follow what's going on over there, but I'll tell you, they're doing all the right things. You know why? Because they get the right people in office, and they're coming down on those creeps that misclassify, the companies that misclassify employees as independent contractors. And what they did, they are raising the fines because a lot of these fines, well, it's a cost of doing business. So they'll pay the fine, they'll keep doing it. Do you hear of any other states like saying, okay, enough is enough here? I think, on a federal level, we have to do something. I don't know if that's going to happen in this. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath on this administration. But if they increase the fines, that would really be a step in the right direction, don't you think?
Absolutely. Look, and this ties into both labor law and immigration, right? Because that's one of the main pathways for these really low-road contractors, right, to abuse these employees and engage in what we can only call wage theft, right? And the penalties are great. They just have to be meaningfully enforced. And at the federal level right now, we just don't have that support. So I love that you lift up New Jersey and their efforts there. And it is happening in some other states. It's sort of a backstop to what needs to be really, a more national effort on that front. But here's the thing, and this is where our members, right, and members across the trades get frustrated. They often see what they think are immigrants without work authorization, and that sometimes may be the case, working as independent contractors. They're not doing that because they want to be independent contractors in most cases. They're doing that because that's how the employer wants to beat the contractor who's behaving, who's doing the right things. He's paying his wages, his fringes, his benefits, his workman's comp, all of his taxes, right? So this is just a system where these bad actors get to game the system, and they don't just undermine the unions and the workers, they undermine the employers who want to play fairly. And to go even a point further, they're denying all the revenue, the proper cuts of income that should be going to states and localities for employers who pay their workers the way they're supposed to. And what's really disappointing is we're fighting efforts right now in this Congress with some members of the GOP who want to expand what they call independent contractor status. That just stands the world on its head. As you said earlier, more and more people want to join a union. They don't want to shed the protections that come with being a worker and an employee. But we've got forces here in D.C. who think that's the world that should be expanding. Unacceptable.
Well, Tim Driscoll, the Bricklayers should be awfully happy to have you as president. I'll tell you, that's a tough job what you're doing there. You got to speak out on these issues. That's what we do here on America's Workforce. So I thank you for your input on the show. Labor Day is right around the corner. Again, this is going to be the 132nd anniversary of Labor Day, designated as a national holiday. Let's leave it on that note. Your message to workers at this point, Tim, it's all yours.
Yeah, look, Labor Day, we just celebrated our 250th anniversary as a country. Fantastic. BAC, as you pointed out, 1865. So we've been around for about 2/3 of that. So Labor Day, a recognition of all the hard work, skills that we put to work every day. But more importantly, what unions, what workers, what engaged citizens mean to that. That's the celebration. That's what Labor Day is going to mean to me this year. We're an absolute pillar to the 250th anniversary, and we're going to be here for the next 250.
Tim Driscoll, president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craftworkers. You can find more at bacweb.org. And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up on the show tomorrow, the Communication Workers of America. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.